You're listening to the Otis Jiry channel.
The Monorail Slasher by JARVIS B. Performed by Otis Jiry. I stopped at the top of the stairs to catch my breath. My NROTC uniform was completely drenched with sweat. You look like a mess, Gary, I thought to myself. I practically ran the last mile from school to catch the monorail. I quickly pulled my Metro card out and swiped it in the kiosk slot. The machine dispensed my ticket, and I ran through the monorail doors as they slid closed. Once in, I scanned the car and spotted 2 empty seats in the front. The monorail was pretty full tonight. I placed my backpack in the seat closest to the window and then dropped myself in the seat next to the aisle. One of the drawbacks of still living at home was that I had to commute back and forth to MU, where I was a freshman in college. My evening class ran long by 20 minutes, which made me late for the earlier monorail home. I just sat back and closed my eyes for what seemed like a second. The next thing I remember is the sensation of slowly falling on my right side and onto my backpack. This quickly woke me up, and I sat up in my seat. I looked back and saw a handful of people in the back row of the car. The monorail suddenly came to a stop. A computerized female voice came over the loudspeaker and said, "Fuller Park Station." The door slid open, and I saw people exit. The door shut, and we once again started moving. "Excuse me, what time is it?" I heard a female voice from behind me say. I turned around to see a single passenger left, a red-haired woman in black with tinted glasses seated at the end of the car. I looked down at my watch and said, "It's 10 p.m., ma'am." "Well, thank you," she replied. I then decided to pull up my history text and see how many pages I had to read for next week. "Wow, are you in the Army?" I looked up from my book, glanced over my shoulder briefly. "No, the Navy." I didn't feel like going into detail. I looked back down at my book, concerned about how many hours I would have to read to be ready for next week's quiz. "It's so admirable to see a young man such as yourself serving our country," she said. "It's my pleasure to serve," I replied politely. "So, are you home on leave or headed back to base?" I stopped, took a deep breath, turned around, and said, "Headed home, ma'am." What is this, 20 questions, I thought. We rode in silence for a few minutes, when she said, "You're such a polite young man." "I try." "And you don't make it easy," I said under my breath. As I turned to acknowledge her, it seemed she had moved up a few seats. I now had a better look at her. I saw that her head was higher than mine. I'm 5'9", making her at least 6'2", maybe 6'3". Her face was long and narrow. Her cheeks were sunken in like she had been ill. Her makeup was too dark for her skin tone because you could see her very pale white neck, in contrast to her face, tall and homely, probably a librarian. I just smiled and went back to looking through my book. "So do you live close by?" I turned. "Yep. I'm just getting off at Thorndike Avenue." "Oh, the monorail's last stop. Me too," she said. This area has changed a lot over the years. Now it's not safe to walk the streets alone at night. There are all sorts of lunatics out there that will kill you for no reason. The police are so thinly spread out across this town that you could be dead for hours before help arrives. I couldn't persuade you to walk me home," she laughed. I half-heartedly said, "I wish I could, ma'am, but I'm pressed for time. This woman must have me confused with a Boy Scout." "Oh, well, I guess I should not be afraid of what's lurking in the dark. There are worse things than a fast, painless death," she said in a nonchalant manner. I thought that was a strange thing to say. I turned to check the digital road map in the back of the car and saw the woman filing her nails with a very shiny and pointy nail file. She had extremely long, muscular-looking hands. "You are a very handsome young man. Anybody ever tell you that? Buy a girl a drink, sailor?" As she said sailor, her voice seemed to go deep for a second. I let out an uncomfortable laugh. I looked back at her and was shocked to see she had moved up and was sitting in the row behind me. I was now staring directly at her. I was struck by the horror of the distorted and deranged image in front of me. This odd and annoying person was wearing some sort of ghastly vinyl mask under a wig and glasses. It was painted to look like a small girl's Cupid doll. I quickly turned back and pretended to look at my book. It all started to add up, the height, the hands, and the voice. I immediately tensed up to the realization that this person was no woman. But why the bizarre mask and all this deception? I then remembered that the police had been looking for some psycho that the local newspapers had dubbed the Slasher, who attacked people with a knife in and around this area for the past 6 months. One eyewitness described him as a young male. Another said he was an older man with gray hair. One cop they interviewed on the news suspected he may be using disguises to throw off the police and conceal his identity. Crap! Could this person be the Slasher? I tried to think of what to do. I pulled out my cell phone, but noticed that the battery was dead. I started to break out into a cold sweat. Is that how this freak show got his thrills? Catching people off guard and scaring them with that mask and watching them panic or freeze in fear? I hit the screen with my finger and put the phone to my ear. "Hey, Mike, it's me. Look, I'm almost at the station. Is Dad with you?" "Cool. See you in a minute." "Oh, so your family's waiting for you at the station? How convenient." He didn't sound convinced. I unzipped the pocket on my backpack and put my cell phone back. I slowly fished around the pocket for my Swiss Army knife, only to remember I had left it at home. The odds were that the station would be completely deserted this time of night. I wonder if that was his plan. Get me alone, then follow me off the monorail, then pounce. I heard a loud bang that made me jump forward in my seat. I turned to my left and saw that he had hit the top of the seat next to me with his nail file. My, you seem so nervous." Now he was just toying with me. The computerized voice came over on the loudspeaker. "Thorndike Avenue Station." "End of the line," he said. I felt the sweat form on my forearms as I prepared to get up from my seat. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I threw my backpack over my shoulder, jumped up from my seat, and ran for the doors. The Slasher tried to get up fast, but slipped on his heels and fell back into the seat. As he struggled to get up, he shouted in a very masculine voice, "Where do you think you're going, you little shit?" I ran on the platform and saw nobody. Without thinking, I ran to my right and down the platform. I saw a small group of teenagers and started yelling, "Hey guys! Hey guys!" As I reached them, I turned and saw nobody behind me. The creep must have run out the other way. I had them call the police. They came out and took a full report. I never rode that monorail again. The slashing was eventually stopped. They never caught the Slasher, but one of his last victims did describe him as a tall, thin, and pale man.